Welcome to the Sonic Collective, a music podcast that explores a different album or musical concept each month, diving deep into its history, context, and impact on the music industry. Join our hosts, Alain, Scott, and Darren Scott, that's way too many Scotts, as they share their thoughts, insights, and personal connections to the music, inviting you, the listener, to discover new perspectives and appreciation for some of the greatest albums and music of all time.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to the Sonic Collective. This is Alain, and today I am joined by Scott Coates, Darren Scott, and Scott Gregory, and it is October of 2025. Technically, it's November of 2025 at this point, but this pick, which was mine, was for spooky season, and I thought we should listen to Recoil. So, if you are not in the know, Recoil is Alan Wilder's project. Alan Wilder, of course, is formerly of Depeche Mode. He went solo in the 1990s and began his passion project producing music under the name Recoil. Now, Recoil is not about pop hooks or radio singles. It's about atmosphere and texture and storytelling through sound. Think of it as cinematic electronica, layered, experimental, often dark. Wilder blends samples, elements of hip-hop, trip-hop, electronic music, drum and bass, etc. And he collaborates with a lot of avant-garde artists as well to help build this immersive and unconventional soundscape. Liquid is the fifth studio release from Recoil, and it's sort of loosely a concept album. It explores some pretty dark topics, things like mortality and memory, fragmented consciousness, and it's all inspired by a near-death encounter Wilder had in the early 90s involving a plane crash in Scotland. Anyway, I cannot wait to hear what you guys think of this one. Let me throw it over to Darren first.
Thanks, Alan. This was definitely an interesting pick. I knew who Alan Wilder was. I actually just recently finally got Depeche Mode Violator on vinyl, which was probably my favorite album of Depeche Mode. That was right when I was a teenager. It was awesome. I loved it. And knew Depeche Mode well. Great band, amazing. They were known to be very dysfunctional to all the band members were disasters in a lot of ways. There's a lot of addiction, alcoholism. I think at one point, I'm forgetting who, Dave, the lead singer, gone, right? I believe he claimed to be a vampire for a while there. So it was really crazy. And so interesting now that he left them because of all that craziness. And you could see that. So he was pretty much known to be the driving force musically. He was classically trained, a very talented musician. He kept them together. He was responsible for a lot of their sound. He never really got the credit in Depeche Mode. So I think that kind of pissed him off too. Martin and Dave were kind of the main guys. They would write the songs and keep it going. But I think he was the one that really probably came in. They probably went, just go beep boop and I'll sing this. But he actually was like, well, why don't I make that into a song for you here? And just the way the sound. And I think when you listen to this Recoil album, even though it's a far departure from Depeche Mode, you just hear it. Every now and then you just hear it and that sounds like a lick out of Depeche Mode or something. So obviously it's his sound. And if anything, he really proved to them because he never got the credit. He goes on and makes these. And I mean, like this style of music or not, a very talented and obviously an amazing musician and talented artist. Personally, I'm probably on that side that it's not really my jam. I think I can absolutely appreciate it. You think of some of the great soundtracks. I think you just hear this, you're like Blade Runner, all that kind of thing. Or now Trent Reznor's getting really known of Nine Inch Nails for a lot of his soundtrack work. I think probably Trent Reznor. I didn't actually research this part, but I wonder if you asked Trent Reznor some of his influence, if he would not say Alan Wilder. I'd be surprised if he didn't.
Trent Reznor actually used this album to start their shows.
Like the entirety of it.
Yeah.
So there you go. I didn't even know that. But I'm like, it just seems like he would be a guy that was heavily influenced with this. I know he was heavily influenced actually by Skinny Puppy, Vancouver, Canada band that was really known for some of the big pioneers of industrial music. So anyway, getting a little off this album, but a little history there. I liked Alan Wilder. I think this album sounds dynamic, and I don't think anybody's going to argue that. One of the first things I thought, when Alan picked it, I kept going back thinking like, is this a new album or is this like 20 years old? And it was 2000, I believe, right? So it's 25 years old. So I was like, holy shit, it sounds like completely modern. Like this could be released tomorrow and you'd be like, oh yeah, this is the soundtrack to a new movie that just came out that's going to be some sci-fi fantasy. It is... You really prefaced it well. It is a cinematic experience. He designed it that way. I think he had 2 albums before this. They were more dark and just kind of electronic, but not really themed as much, where he really worked this one to have a whole theme. I thought it was cool. It definitely takes a lot of listens, I found. My first few listens were rough. And then I was just like, I'm not sure I like it. I'm not sure if I can get into it. But as I listened a few more times, I found it kind of, you have to give it that focus. And you mentioned it in the pick last month, but I think having a little cannabis or some other substance, or even a few glasses of wine before and relaxing and just putting on headphones and closing your eyes is what you want to do when you listen to this kind of album. So it is an experience of an album and a listen. That's absolutely the way it's meant to be. If you think you're just going to put this on in the car, have a background while you're studying, forget it. You'll lose it. It just can't work that way. So again, not my exact style of music, but sure appreciated it. He had a lot of guest vocals on there. The one song I really liked was Jezebel, but of course, again, I think it's also probably the most song structured of all of them on there. It's kind of like a cool, dancey little vibe. It's got a cool sound to it. I really got into that. But again, I think I was looking for that structure of the song, and that's just where I go to. But the rest of it is very cool, and it kind of ebbs and flows. It brings you up and down. It kind of takes you through a journey. And listening to the women, especially on good headphones, I had my earbuds in a lot, like just freaky. They're kind of whispering in your ears, and it's like, again, if you're a little high, it's like I was tripping balls. The other night, I gave it the attention. I had some weed and just kind of listened to the whole thing beginning to end. And actually, it was fun. Like that was literally just like 2 nights ago. And we've had this a bit of a delay getting this recorded, so we've really been listening to this for more than a month now. And it really just took me till 2 nights ago. I'm like, you know what? I think I finally got it. Like I listened to it enough. I had the right amount of weed, and I was just kind of in a quiet environment. And that's definitely what you want to do. I think very influential, as I mentioned, to Trent Reznor, others, and would still stand up today. Now, I think when I get my scores, I think it is a very niche area. I'm sure glad there's artists like this, and you think, I'm glad he left Depeche Mode, but he obviously made a shit ton of money in Depeche Mode, and that allowed him to develop this kind of music that then influenced others. Like, again, you think of 9 Inch Nails, who I love. Like, does Trent Reznor sound the way he does if he didn't experience this album 20 years ago or 25 years ago? It's a good question. But I really thought it was interesting. I appreciate it for what it is. It actually reminded me of some older music. Right away, I was like, this reminds me of something. And the first was Enigma. Do you remember that band in the 90s? I just call it sex music. Yeah, exactly. It was just total sex music. But that was like one of the first albums I remember being young, and you go like, it's not really a pop album. It was kind of dancey, but it had a lot of spoken word and cool things, but you definitely put it on when you were alone with a girl. It was awesome. But I remember it just reminded me of that. And another song, if you remember French Kiss by Little Louie, and it was just kind of this like, house music kind of thing, and then all of a sudden this girl would be groaning in the background like she was having sex. It really reminded me of that kind of era, and that we're going back in the 90s and stuff, and I mean they were just songs, not full experiences. Well, actually, sorry, Enigma was, and that was a full album of that type of genre, but it's just like he took that, made it more cinematic, and did his own experience. I think I'll leave it there for now, come back in a bit, but yeah, again, really interesting. Again, probably not my total thing myself, but sure appreciated it. Scott Coates, what do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. I'm really glad you picked this as well. And it was an experience, right? I actually didn't even think to look to see if they had other albums. I just figured this was a one-off for some reason. So for you to say it's the fifth album, oh wow, I've now probably got to go back and listen. Also, somehow I've never gotten into Depeche Mode over the years. I know a couple of the singles, and I don't love them, and the other bits I've heard I don't really like. So maybe it's time for me to pick a Depeche Mode album almost for this organization or club we have. Look, I listen to this lots of times. I actually just listened to it this morning as well over my first cup of coffee while doing some stuff. And it seems, it keeps making me feel like it should be an audiobook or an accompaniment to an art film or to an art installation. Like I keep feeling like I should be looking at something while I listen to it, right? Because I'm not sure what to call it. It's an album, yeah, but there's half of it is songs. The other half is kind of just really out there talking and kind of spoken word poetry sort of style. So yeah, again, I just keep feeling like it should be the movie soundtrack for a John Wick kind of thing, or yeah, some background for an art installation, which isn't a bad thing. It's just I'm not sure what to do with it, right? Things like Black Box and Want the Talking, but then you hit Jezebel and it just shift gears and I'm into a tune and I kind of go, hang on, like, what am I supposed to be doing now? So it was on my toes every time I listened to it. I think I listened to it 5 times. And I couldn't remember what was coming next, so it was a surprise. Like, usually when we listen to albums, I kind of know what's coming after a couple listens, and this time, each time, I sort of wasn't sure. The song Chrome really reminded me of a band called Death in Vegas. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them. I really loved their first album, as well as Massive Attack. But then, just this morning, I'm like, this is really like Honey from Moby's Play album. If you go back and listen to Honey, the first song off Play, Chrome is quite like that. So I really enjoyed the experience. You know, in a way, it took me back to me picking Apollo by Brian Eno. Because in a sense, like, what do you do with that, right? Actually, I know what I do with it. I work to it because I just put it on. It's nice ambient music. But I'm like, that's also something like you're not going to listen to that in your car or jogging, or so what do you do with it? You know, a couple of songs I quite like: Chrome, Jezebel, Vertigo, but then things like Breathe Control, Last Call, Liquid for Courage, Supreme. Again, I felt like I should be playing that video game or walking through a dark warehouse at an art installation. So, I mean, really, really neat album. Super glad you picked it. Never heard anything like it. Again, I'm still struggling what to do with it because I didn't dislike it. I didn't love it. I'm not sure, like, again, I wouldn't listen to it while having friends over, while cooking or jogging. Like, it just doesn't fit in anywhere. But wow, what a incredibly interesting experience. And now that you've mentioned this is a 5th album, I am going to go back and listen to a few more because I'm curious if they follow the similar format. But really wild. Okay, thanks. Over to you, Scott Gregory.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, so I actually did listen to Depeche Mode a lot growing up. I mean, I came in right at about the Violator era. You know, I had heard, you know, the previous album. Which one was it? I honestly can't even remember. That tells you how much I listened to it. Black Celebration. Just looked it up real quick. I didn't actually remember that. But I'd heard some of the stuff off Black Celebration. But until you get, you know, Violator with Personal Jesus and all those ones that really gained a lot of traction, you didn't really hear them. And so that's really, I think that's after the Alan Wilder era of them. And it wasn't until I went into their back catalog that I really got an appreciation. And there is a flavor difference. It's like Coke and Coke Classic. You can tell, you know, if you're really paying attention between them. Collaboration is at the core of this album, I think, right? And mashups are fine. I love mashups, but that's a producer overlaying their vision over like 2 other or 3 other artists. I like when artists come together and create something together from the outset. It reminds me of tracks. You guys have mentioned soundtracks like Tiny Rubber Band off the Spawn soundtrack, which was Moby and Butthole Surfers, if I remember right.
Yeah.
But then, you know, you've got Romeo and Juliet as a soundtrack, the Crow soundtrack. There's all of these ones where just the music tells a greater story. It's greater than the sum of its parts, right? And I think that's the same thing here. There's very much a story going on here. And you can until I went to the Wikipedia article, I was writing my own story. And then, as Alan had mentioned before, there was an actual life experience that fueled the content for the narrative, and going back and listening to it again after that was another new experience over top, right? Because I'd gone from mapping my own kind of thoughts about what all these songs meant and how they were moving together into, now this new framework of like this near-death experience of this plane crash and that. And yeah, it is very much a concept album. Nicole Blackman, she collaborates on a number of tracks, including Want was mentioned before, Breath Control, and Chrome. And while Want seems to be the most played track on the album, according to Spotify, I found myself drawn to Breath Control. The track just has this great bass line and edge to it that complements Nicole's voice. She's like a spoken word transgressive performer, and the lyrics really shine through in that transgressive way as well. She totally knows what to do with everything around her on it, right? It's a complete story in itself, this one song, which I liked, kind of tucked into this greater story overall. The other standout for me was Jezebel. Darren mentioned them as well, too. It features Orlandis Wilson from the Golden Gate Quartet, a group from the 1930s who I had never heard of. But, you hear these samples or these inclusions and you're like, who is that? What is that, right? And I think it's just a nice juxtaposition of this jazz and gospel theme with this modern electronic goth aesthetic. It's just really top tier stuff. That being said, if you have access to the bonus track version of the album, there's another version called the Filthy Dog Mix that is a more up-tempo snare and cymbal heavy kind of version of it that I really enjoyed as well too. But I think the original inserting into this album is perfection in itself, and then that one's really more just a point of interest to see what else you can do to play with it. Yeah, the rest of the album, it's solid too. I think it does really weave just a story as a whole. After listening to it a couple times on my own, I never got tired of it. And like Scott said, I really couldn't figure out what to do with this thing. I was like, I can't listen to individual tracks on this very much. There's the two that kind of appeal to me, but it feels like you got to listen to the whole hour, right? Like, what are you going to do? It's not something you're going to pick apart into playlists. It was a new experience, like I said, after finding out the history behind it. Digging into an artist's vision on the track is really good. We kind of let the cat out of the bag as far as what the story behind it is, so I was going to suggest that you listen to it first without going there, but now you can't do that, so it sucks to be you. But overall I thought it was a pretty solid album. It's worth a listen. And I would likely throw it on from time to time. I've listened to some Recoil before, but it was always just what got thrown at me in either Spotify recommendations or looking through YouTube. And now I really feel like I've done Alan's work a disservice by looking at individual tracks before. And I think I'm going to go back into his back catalog and listen to the entire albums as a whole, because we talk about wanting to have that experience still live on, and here it is. And I was mistreating the music, so shame on me. I'm gonna go back, listen to I keep saying Revolver, Recoil. I don't know why, but honest to God, like, it's for years. Anytime I've tried to think of Recoil, I always come to Revolver first in my brain. And
that's because when you shoot a revolver, you feel the recoil.
There's Recoil. Except for, I'm so buff, I don't even know what Recoil is.
Of course.
No, I wish. But yeah, he doesn't disappoint me. It hits me in the same spot as something like the Crow soundtrack. Maybe 2 songs off of this into playlists. And otherwise, I'm going to treat it like I would rock operas like Tommy or The Wall or Bat Out of Hell, which I know everyone here loves. They're best enjoyed as a whole. And I feel that way about this album story as well. What about you, Alan?
Yeah, appreciate your insight, guys. Totally agree with everything you said. And Scott Coates, something you mentioned actually about you were drawing parallels to that Brian Eno album.
Yeah.
I had the same thought. And I also really enjoyed the Brian Eno album. And I really enjoyed the Brian Eno album, especially because I happened to listen to it high on mushrooms. Music just sounds better on mushrooms. But yeah, like, what do you do with it? It's almost an ambience, except I wouldn't listen to this Recoil album while working. It's just too unnerving, right? Anyway, I've been waiting a long time to share this one with you guys. I first discovered Recoil a couple of years ago, and it was unforgettable. I was also on a mushroom trip when the track Jezebel came on, and it was incredible and creepy, and I felt really, really unsettled, and I didn't really understand it. I didn't really understand why. But as I listened more intently to the music, I started picking up on all the layers in the production with more clarity, and I realized, like, the reason I feel so out of sorts is because this music has been purposely designed to make me feel that way. Darren, you mentioned the whispering. Those whispers were like dripping in reverb, and they were not timed to the beat, so it sounded like they were just a little bit behind, which gives a sense of depth in the production. That subtle, nuanced soundscape that undercut this music paints a dark cinematic portrait. And so I leaned into it. I knew I had to listen to the rest of this friggin' album. I'll set the scene for you guys. I was alone in a dark room, no lights, just candles. I had a glass of scotch in my hand, and I'm staring out the window, looking out on the city lights. My plants are kind of casting weird shadows because of the candles, and I've got the volume on this thing cranked all the way up, just soaking it in, pondering it, savoring it. And that's when I really first came to appreciate, like, how layered and textural and eerie this freaking album is. And as I'm looking out the window in contemplation, I'm allowing myself to get completely creeped out from the spooky vibes. Like, I felt the hooks in me. And I knew then in that moment that I needed to pick this album for us to review one day, just because of like how visceral I felt in that moment anyway. So fast forward a couple years later, and here we are. And you know, I was honestly a little bit hesitant to recommend it because it is such an unconventional and kind of a dark album. It is really music that's meant to be pondered and absorbed, not listened to. We talk a lot about the experience, but I do want to shout out, like, there's a lot of drum and bass and trip hop sensibilities in this. There's live music going on. It's not just synthesizers. It's not just samples. Like, there were live instruments in studio. But some of the elements I really like about this album, just like in regards to the samples, he throws a lot of, like, sophisticated somehow. I don't know. Like, I was in on a well-kept secret. It's something rare and special, and you know, it's not just music, it's something else. Like, this is not for normies. It's just too inaccessible. But that's what makes it special and so rewarding, because it really is an audio experience. I'll shout out a few of my favorite tracks. Firstly, Jezebel. That was like the gateway drug for me to get into Recoil in the first place. But like the samples and the remixes from the Golden Gate Quartet, it's just spooky and haunting and ethereal. The way he produced it blows my mind. Every time I listen to it, I just can't fathom how he made that based on, you know, this gospel choir from the 1930s. He just reimagines it in such a different way than I think the original artists were envisioning for their music. So really cool stuff. Strange Hours and Breath Control, really great songs as well. They pull you in. It's almost hypnotic and surreal and unsettling. Of course, that's kind of like the theme of this album, is it's really unsettling. But if you close your eyes and listen, like, you're going to capture those whispers and the drums and that voodoo vibe and the operatic fragments. They're all buried deep in the mix. They're all kind of a little bit off kilter, a little bit off time, a little bit out of tune to add to that sense of depth and unease. And as someone learning music production, I'm just floored by the meticulous detail in every one of these songs. Every time I play Liquid, I hear something new. There's like a new hidden texture or a new subtle effect I never picked up on before. It's dark, it's immersive, it's unconventional. This is a production masterclass in how to create atmosphere and tell a story through music and sound design. It's more than just music. It's something entirely different. It's the soundtrack to a movie you make in your own mind. I think that's good closing words there. So let me throw it back over to you, Darren, for your final thoughts and your scores.
Yeah, great. I mean, we all seem to be on the same page about it. I didn't write who quoted it, but I wrote down a quote I read that, and I think Scott Coates, you mentioned Massive Attack, but the quote is, think of it as Massive Attack meets David Lynch filtered through Wilder's gothic sensibility. And I like that because David Lynch makes some crazy, creepy, weird-ass movies, and Massive Attack has that very distinct, cool electronic sound, cutting edge, and then just kind of through this gothic like lens. And I mean, again, I keep coming back, like I couldn't, like Blade Runner soundtrack, you just, like the original one, just known for that whole atmosphere, and that's what you get. So I mean, he's winning when he does that. And you mentioned too, like, and I said the whispers, but there was a couple times either on my buds or I was driving in the car too. I have a pretty good stereo in my car, and a few times I turned it down because I thought some of the noises were coming from outside. I was like, oh shit, something like some weird sound. I'm like, oh no, that's just actually part of the song. Like, so it's really trippy. I actually wish I had it in vinyl. You said you had grabbed it. Mm-hmm. I would have loved to listen through it on vinyl. Again, we're just listening through Spotify, which, you do get compression. I would love to hear the intricate sounds of this one. Maybe I'll try and find a more lossless version and give it a chance again, because I think, dude, there's so many sounds. It's so deep. Yeah. So again, I really respect that. I think people that, if you're looking for traditional song structures outside of, some moments, or Jezebel maybe as a whole a little bit, but like, you're not really going to find it. If you're a Depeche Mode fan, you're going in, you think you're going to get Depeche Mode here. You're not necessarily going to find it, but like I said, you can definitely feel the influence, and it's him. But, I think that part is a bit different. I don't know if I'll go back to it that much, but I sure appreciated it. As you guys were talking, I thought of something. It's like, and you're trying to like classify it. And I really thought of art, and I'm like, everything's an art. All musicians are artists, but I almost like, like pop music, a lot of the stuff, all that's coming out now on just the radio top 40 pop stuff. That's just like your Bob Ross, learn to paint. You just hammer out those mountain landscapes with your fan brushes, and it's fine. You can tell it's a mountain scene, but it's just it's not really to be appreciated. Where this is like a Monet, where you go to a museum somewhere in the world, you see one of the world-class artists like a Monet, and you just want to stare at that and really absorb the painting and the art and see the intricacies and the brush lines. That's that. So, I mean, this is a very specialized artist, top of his craft, reinventing electronic music or taking it to another level where he wanted to go. So, I mean, I got to give Alan Wilder massive props, even though I'm probably not the best audience, but I did appreciate it, and it is creepy as hell when you listen to it like that. And also, don't forget Depeche Mode. We did Some Great Reward album review way back. I believe that was you that picked that, Alan.
Yeah,
so if you're interested in that, there's another episode. Just Google on our podcast or our website, thesoniccollective.com. You'll find it. That's the People Are People album, one of their first. Was that the first album? Was it? I don't think it's their first, was it?
I don't think it was their first.
I can't remember. Anyways, an early Depeche Mode album, but that's on there too. But anyway, for scores, recommend, I just got to do it too, because I think this is a very specialized, again, I'd like to say you should do it, but it's not for everybody. It is very soundtracky, experiency. If you want to take out a musical adventure, do it. But if you're just an average music fan, don't think you're really going to love it. Influence, I think it was to who it was, but I think I'm a 2.5 there. I think the electronic industry was influenced by it, but it just didn't permeate. Like you said, it's nobody really knows there. I had no idea. I never heard of Alan Wilder's second band until now. And overall, I'm coming in at 2.5. And again, I think it's an amazing album. It's more from a personal standpoint for me. I just think it's one of those ones, and it's an experience. All right, I'll throw it over to, I forget where I was at, Scott Coates? Was I there?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I want to preface the scores by saying I didn't dislike it. Like I think experience. is what it is. And somebody kind of mentioned, I don't know how you just put it, but I think it was Alan was talking, it was like you don't feel you fit in or if part of this world. And you reminded me of something. For some reason, I thought of this woman that I went out with a couple times when I was probably 20 or 21 in Calgary. And she was pretty artsy and far out there and definitely not in my circle. And I remember feeling like I've gotten into an area or like a world that's not mine and I don't belong. And I thought of this woman every time I listened to this album. I don't know why. So it's funny you said that. Also, Darren mentions the mystery sounds. Yeah, every time I listened to it, I'd hear a plane or I'd hear a train on a train track or something, and I'd kind of turn and then I'd realize, oh, this is on the album, and I seem to pick up new sounds every single time. So super interested in it and glad we had the experience. I increased my influence up to 3 because of the fact I just learned they have 4 other albums. So it has influenced me in that I'm now going to go back and I'm going to listen to those other 4 albums because I'm just really curious. Recommend I'll give it a 3.5 to real music enthusiasts just to kind of explore again. Like I've never heard anything like this in my musical life, so I'll give it a 3.5. But overall, I'm giving it a 2.5 just because, again, I'm not sure what to do with it. Like I don't see myself throwing on Recoil randomly. Glad I had the experience. Probably won't listen to it again. But wow, what a ride. Thank you. Thanks, Alan. And over to you, Scott Gregory.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I am a Depeche Mode fan, and I think this translates over really well for those types of fans. It is different though, so beware going in, but I think it's in like the same flavor category. I think if you are a Depeche Mode fan, you will have a high percentage chance of liking this as well, understanding that it is going to be different fare. Yeah, like Darren said, Alan Wilder is at the top of his craft. You're not going to find much better than this in this category. And for all the Calgary people out there, like I used to go to Industrial Night at the Warehouse and listen to a bunch of, especially the stuff that was coming out of the UK. I always say the 3 C's in my rock and roll music life was the Cult, the Cure, the Clash. And there's a little bit of all of those. I feel like same flavor families. I keep coming back to the like flavor in here, right? Like it's different. It's transgressive. It's not like anything you've probably heard before. And if you have, then you probably do like this. And I am a bit of a tourist in this area, right? But I'm a polite, respectful one. I've never gone on a big Jesus and Mary chain kind of listen journey or anything like that. But I do like Recoil, and I think I will as well, like I said, be going through the albums again as albums and enjoying them. I do not imbibe in any of the special substances that many of our other members do, and I can tell you that I still enjoy them in full control of my faculties. So any of your teetotalers out there, do not let that dissuade you either. For scores, influence, I'm going to give it a 3.5. It is in the wheelhouse of things that I have enjoyed in the past, and as Scott said, it is encouraging me to go back through their catalog and then pull on some of the strings of the influences and the artists that were in there as well too. I'll recommend, I'm going to give a 4.5, and part of that is based on something that Scott Coates said. He's never heard anything like this before. There isn't, you're not going to run into this accidentally, unless you're randomly pulling from a box of records.
Or
from
have
like
a random Spotify playlist recommend Jezebel to you. While you're
yeah,
on
but even then, are you going to hit the whole album, right? So I'm highly going to recommend this because you're not going to run into it any other way. And I think it's something that you should experience and run with it. And if you like it, great. And if you don't like it, well, then, at least you know. So overall, in honor of our fallen comrade Owen, I'm going to give it a 4.1. and call
no
that
0.1 integers.
Alan.
Thanks. Darren, you mentioned this is art. Agreed. I think this isn't disposable pop music. This is more like a painting that you listen to. And maybe that's why when we talk about this album being 25 years old and not sounding like that, like it could have just come out yesterday, maybe it's because this is more of an art piece than, just a purely musical experience. A couple of you guys mentioned maybe wanting to check out another Recoil release. I would highly recommend, in that case, Unsound Methods. That's their album from 1997. And start with a track called Drifting. It's catchy, it's moody, tons of pop sensibilities, unlike a lot of what we heard on Liquid, but sonically very similar. There's still that sensibility of creating ambience and atmosphere and mood, but it sounds like a conventional song. So Drifting on Unsound Methods, that's a good one to go with. I think I've probably made it pretty clear at this point that I really enjoyed listening to this album. This month and in previous times. If you want an album that's challenging but rewards patience and you feel like stepping into somebody's dark subconscious, Liquid is absolutely a masterpiece worth exploring, but only if you're in the mood for that kind of thing. So for that reason, I don't know, I'm torn with these numbers because they're going to be pretty highly personal to me. Influence, I have to give a 5 out of 5. Because after hearing one song, it influenced me to listen to this album, which then influenced me to listen to other things. I even went out and bought the albums on vinyl for way too much money because I really like them. And as I'm sort of on this journey to learn music production for myself, I often revisit Recoil just to study how they've layered in these sounds and these effects and these atmospheres to make the music feel elevated, like it's an experience versus just a song. And obviously, beyond my own personal experience, Recoil's meticulous methodology when it comes to sampling and cinematic design have also been cited as benchmarks by various trip-hop and industrial and dark wave producers. And of course, we mentioned earlier in the show, Nine Inch Nails actually used to play this prior to their concerts during the Fragility tour. So that says a lot about the impact this album has had. All right, for recommendation, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 with a big caveat. If you're a music producer or you are a fan of horror movies or thrillers or anything like that, or maybe you just appreciate something sophisticated and moody, this album is a must, but it is absolutely not for the casual listener, and it's definitely not easy listening. So I wouldn't recommend this to the 20-year-old girls that I work with, but I would recommend this to all of the music geeks and the horror geeks and the goth kids. You know what I mean? You got to be in the mood. You got to be willing to spend some time and dive deep and really give this your full attention, but I promise you the payoff is worth it. So overall, I got to give it a 4.5 out of 5. I just can't get enough of this album. Every time I listen to it, I keep hearing more and more things that he's buried in the mix. And so it's kind of like the gift that keeps on giving in that regard. And I am genuinely surprised that more people haven't heard of Recoil. Music of this caliber honestly could achieve so much crossover success across so many different subcultures. But I think Alan Wilder himself is kind of reclusive, and so he probably doesn't do a whole lot of self-promotion. And maybe that's why this is so underground, but I really think it deserves not to be. And so I'm proud to be able to pick this one and hopefully expose a few more people to just how cool this music is. So overall, 4.5 out of 5. And that is the end of our review of Recoil Liquid. Scott Gregory, you are next up to pick the album we're reviewing, I believe. Let me throw it back over to you for you to tee it up here.
I have picked 1993's Cold Water Flat by Revolver. No, I'm just kidding. I'd already told Darren what the new one was, so he's got a little shock face on there. No, many times we pick the first album from a band, but sometimes we review one from later on, like we did with Def Leppard. In the case of that album, we had some unflattering things to say about them trying to transition from their glam rock era into one dominated by grunge. Other bands like U2 have evolved their sound to mixed reviews as well. And as we found out a couple months ago, it feels like Machine Gun Kelly changes genres like every second album. So It's Blitz, the third studio album by the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, was released in 2009. And most people will know them for the song Maps off their first album, which got some decent radio play, or because they tortured themselves trying to beat it on Expert in Rock Band. With that content, they came out of the gate with a strong garage punk sound, and their debut album was greatly anticipated. It got rave reviews. Darren's holding it up as we speak. Their sophomore album, while receiving positive reviews, was often cited as it was searching a bit for where they wanted to take their sound. There were a lot of questions hanging over the band. And with that context in mind, maybe I can convince you all to listen to the first two albums first, because I'd like you to join me in listening to It's Blitz, not just as an individual album, but a band evolving its art and voice. And as always, everyone brings their own flavor and angles to our reviews, so I'm curious to hear what you all dig up about the album and what you think about it as well, too.
I'm excited for that one. I really like the Yes.
Yeah. I was a big fan for a number of years.
Never heard him before either, but I did listen to it once. Interesting.
Yeah.
A new one for me.
Love it. Thanks, guys. That's always fun.
Yeah, for sure. On behalf of the Sonic Collective, big thanks to you, the listener. Check us out at thesoniccollective.com or all of the various socials. Until next time, Sonic Collective signing out.